Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. You know, a lot of teams were hit hard by COVID in 2020. But Washington was hit at the worst possible time. The Huskies were preparing to play in the Pac-12 Championship game after going 3-1, winning the Pac-12 North. But they got hit by COVID right before the championship game, had to drop out and give their spot to their bitter rival in Oregon, who then went on to win the Pac-12 Championship over USC. The Huskies check in at number 16 in our early Gridiron Expert Top 25, and they are looking to bounce back and win the Pac-12 North again, and this time actually play in the Pac-12 Championship game. Practically everybody from that team last year, and again, put as much stock into the games and the numbers and the stats as you want because the Pac-12 had a very short season, but almost every single player from that Huskies team returns in 2021. All 11 starters are back on offense, 8 starters are back on defense, making year 2 for Jimmy Lake a very, very big one, a very important one with very high expectations that normally you do not see from second-year head coaches. The biggest thing for Washington right now is finding themselves a quarterback. Who's it going to be? Will it be Dylan Morris? Completed 60.9% of his passes for 897 yards and 4 touchdowns last year. Will it be number 1 pocket passer, Sam Heward, number 1 in the ESPN 300? Or will it be Patrick O'Brien, the transfer quarterback from Colorado State? The Huskies find themselves a quarterback and improved just a little bit offensively. They only scored more than 27 points once last year, exceeded 27 just once last year. They do all that, and this team's set because we know the defense is always going to be strong as long as Lake is their head coach. This team is absolutely a Pac-12 North contender, and they're absolutely a Pac-12 title contender, a Pac-12 conference that they expect to win. We take a look at their schedule, though. Does it line up for them to win the Pac-12 North? Does it line up for them to even have a shot at winning the Pac-12 in 2021? We'll start right up here at the top. Montana, not that big of a deal. Arkansas State, not that big of a deal. It's that game against Michigan on September 11th that is going to be very, very important and very, very exciting. Obviously, I love this game. I think it's one of the most intriguing non-conference games of 2021. And it's unfortunate that Washington kind of got snubbed because Michigan was supposed to make their way out to Seattle last year to play the Huskies. And COVID ruined all these non-conference games, so Washington's not getting Michigan at home. They have to travel to Ann Arbor to the Big House. But you could argue that Washington football right now is in a better state than Michigan football. They're in a better position to succeed than Michigan football, who seemed just in a sort of disarray last year and somehow has retained Jim Harbaugh for another season, actually signed him to an extension. So yes, Michigan adds Alan Bowman, the Texas transfer quarterback. Yes, they have a lot of questions to fill, but you could argue that Washington, from a coaching standpoint, from a talent standpoint, is in a better spot. The only thing Michigan has going for them is home field advantage in this one. And obviously, if all stadiums across the country are allowed full capacity or close to it, playing in the Big House will be very difficult. But it's a challenge that Washington absolutely can handle. This is going to be a very sneaky good game, guys. And obviously, I love the history because these two teams were pretty big rivals back in the 90s and early 2000s, if you know a little bit of college football history. So this is going to be a very fun game, and even though it's on the road, it is not a game that should be chalked up as a Washington loss right off the bat because Michigan, again, is struggling. And again, we're not predicting any games here. We're not predicting any wins and losses that will come much later, but just kind of putting out speculation right now. They start Pac-12 play against California on September 25th. California is one of those teams that has consistently, at least for the last few years, given Washington issues. So this is certainly a game the Huskies can't afford to overlook. It's not a game that they will overlook. But as long as Chase Garbers and Justin Wilcox are together, and God, it feels like Garbers has been there forever, they have a chance to win any game in the Pac-12 conference. And I wholeheartedly mean that. Garbers is phenomenal. He's not the flashiest quarterback. He's not the best quarterback, but he's phenomenal as a starter. He has an amazing track record. And we know the Golden Bears are going to have a solid defense as long as Wilcox is their head coach, and they do return a handful of starters offensively to make it another possible special year for California. At Oregon State on October 2nd, the Huskies beat the Beavers 27-21. This is another, I think, a trap game for Washington here because Jonathan Smith is doing a great job with the Beavers. I know they lost a lot of key players from last year, including Jamar Jefferson at running back. But when you look at the talent that they do have coming back and how well they played in 2020, Oregon State is no longer becoming an afterthought in the Pac-12. They're a team that people have to watch out for, especially when you go into their house. Right before a bye week, this game does scare me a little bit for Washington. Right before the bye, wanting to rest, maybe after a physical game against California. If they are 4-0, this could be a scary game for the Huskies to get caught in a trap. They get their bye week. They play UCLA. I love that the bye comes before they play the Bruins because they are trending in the right direction. They're going to give it their all every single game. This is one of those teams, guys, that was so young last year under Chip Kelly that they didn't know how to finish. But we saw a lot of improvement from them. With Dorian Thompson-Robinson back under center, UCLA is one of those sneaky teams in the Pac-12 that could absolutely thrive and surprise everybody, or once again could tank and Chip Kelly could be back on the streets. I don't even know if there's a happy medium there. UCLA is quite the anomaly, but it's good that Washington's getting a bye. It's good they're getting him at home. At Arizona, not too worried about that game. Arizona's quite the dumpster fire. Washington won by 17 last year. They have a brand new head coach in Jed Fish. It's going to take a while to get the ball rolling out in Tucson. At Stanford on October 30th, Washington lost to them 31-26 last year. That was the Huskies' lone loss in 2020. Certainly they'll be out to avenge that game. I always love the Washington-Stanford matchups. We've seen some classics in recent years. Stanford's one of their strengths, I think, is going to be their defense. Whether or not the Cardinal can find any success offensively, that's the million-dollar question. You lose a quarterback like Davis Mills, who's going to go in and replace him? Are they going to find a run game finally? Is the offensive line going to start doing their job? David Shaw has a lot of questions to answer offensively. So this could be a very low-scoring game on the 30th. But again, one that Washington needs to be prepared for because Oregon's on November 6th. And you do not want to overlook Stanford in preparation for a game against Oregon. Yes, first off, it's a big rivalry game. But second, it's a game that could decide who wins the Pac-12 North. So can't afford to overlook that. You're looking for trap games? It's Oregon State and it's Stanford. For me, both on the road, both before big dates, a week of rest, and maybe the biggest game on Washington's schedule. Those are the two trap games for me. But when you want to see the key stretch for Washington, it's right here. The whole month of November is the key stretch for the Huskies. And I'll show you why. Look at these first three teams. And I'm not even dogging Washington State, but I'll talk about them now. It's the Apple Cup, and it's a series that Washington has dominated for the last, 15 years now? I mean, they have dominated this series against the Cougars. And yes, they have Nick Rolovich. Yes, they have a budding star in Jaden DeLora. Yes, this game might be more competitive than people think. But right now, and I'm not picking games, but when you look at the Apple Cup, you just automatically assume Washington's going to win. No matter how great Washington State is, how bad Washington is, you just go with Washington because of the history and how well they play in this rivalry game. So that's there. It's a big deal. It is part of the key stretch, but these three are the bigger ones. You start with Oregon. Again, it's a game that could determine the Pac-12 North. Bad blood enough as it is because it's a rivalry game. Bad enough. Well, you add on what happened last year with Washington not getting to play in the Pac-12 Championship, having to watch Oregon take their spot, win the Pac-12, go to the Fiesta Bowl, spot that Washington very well could have had. That just gets the blood boiling even more, and the Huskies gets to host them in Seattle. How about that? They get a home game against the Ducks. They host the Ducks with a potential division crown on the line, and depending on how both these teams do, could be a top 10, top 15 matchup. That's huge. Then you got Arizona State. Washington somehow got both of those teams at home. So you talk about favorable. Not favorable that they have to play Oregon and Arizona State in back-to-back weeks, but favorable that they're both in Seattle. They're both at home. Because Arizona State is one of the best teams in the Pac-12 South. We talked about them in the schedule preview series. They were the number 25 team in our rankings. Jaden Daniels is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I love Herm Edwards as their head coach. The defense is very sneaky good, extremely underrated. They have to come to Seattle, but depending on what happens here on the 6th, Arizona State could come on the road and steal a win from the Huskies. Because Washington could either be hung over after a devastating loss to Oregon, knowing they can't win the division anymore, possibly. They might not care. Or they're going to be on a big high, and we always know you're on a high, there is that chance of a letdown. Cannot afford to have a letdown against Arizona State, a team that at this point in the season could be fighting for their own division crown, where every game is going to matter depending on how their Sun Devils fare against USC. So 2 huge games against Oregon and Arizona State, and then at Colorado, a team that nearly won the Pac-12 South last year, a team that has a very, very strong running game and exceeded expectations in year 1 under Karl Dorrell. Whether or not he can keep up that success in a full season, again, COVID benefited some teams when it came to lack of preparation. I think Colorado was one of them. They didn't have that much preparation, surprised a lot of people, though, with that lack of preparation and lack of games, I should say. But Colorado, I do think, is trending in the right direction. They've started to play relatively well in Boulder. And again, depending on what happens in these 2 games, could get caught lacking at the Buffaloes. And again, could get caught looking ahead to their big rivalry game against Washington State. The entire month of November will make or break Washington's season. Everybody would say the Oregon game alone would do that, but it's so much more than that. Arizona State is huge. Colorado is huge. The rivalry game is huge. And again, trap game against Oregon State and Stanford. But that month, that 4-game stretch, to me, is the biggest for Jimmy Lake and the Huskies. Because I'm telling you guys, the talent is there. That experience is there. That depth is there. And Jimmy Lake's a dang good coach. We have Washington at number 16 for a reason. It's a 2-way battle in the North between the Huskies and the Ducks. The Huskies and Oregon. They meet on the 6th. And that's going to begin the stretch of whether or not we see Washington as a legitimate Pac-12 title contender, or whether or not they're going to take a little bit of a step back after technically winning the division in 2020. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, hit that bell for those notifications because we're continuing our schedule previews and we're going through every single top 25 team for us, but you never know which team's coming up. And you're not going to know unless you get our notification. So make sure to do that. Hit the bell. I promise you're not going to regret it. You're not going to regret checking out everything down in the description either. Exclusive college football content for you guys year-round, around the clock. Do not miss out on it because it's there for you, the diehard college football fan. So why not take advantage of it? And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. And we will see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.